Being a dreadful, awful, ghastly racist such as myself does tend to give me an advantage because it means I can actually talk about race. And we do need to talk about race because the 21st century, unless things change, will see the virtual extinction of my white European race. Now people are going to think that's a paranoid statement to make.
For the first time ever, the number of people who class themselves as white British is now a minority in London. The 2011 census results out today show 45% of Londoners are now white British.
People who identify as white British citizens are now a minority in their capital city. People who identify as white British citizens are now a minority in their capital city.
For example, in America, that used to be, only in 1950, a massively white majority country. Today, white babies born in America are an ethnic minority already. This hasn't happened in Europe yet, but in Europe we have a big problem because we are demographically declining as a race. 1.5 children means that tomorrow's generation is 25% smaller than today's. But the important thing to remember is, what is it going to be like for us living as a white ethnic minority in England? Well, it's not going to be very nice. If you look at, well, first of all, let's look at it economically. According to the Equalities Commission, 50% of black males are unemployed, 50% of Muslim males are unemployed, 75% of Muslim females are unemployed. The ones that do work do not work on very high salaries, but they do have very large families, so they therefore get housing benefit and welfare. Now the money has already run out for this, so we are already bankrupt. We have soaring welfare bills, soaring housing bills. We can't afford it. So economically, when these people are in a majority, economically the country is finished. But take it further than economically, what's it going to be like for us physically living as a white minority? And I'm not talking about ambiguous people here, I'm talking literally about your children, your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, because they are going to have to live as an ethnic minority. So what is it going to be like for them? Well, let's look at a country like South Africa, where whites are a minority. There are 40,000 white farmers in South Africa, and since the end of apartheid, 4,000 of them have been killed. 10% have been killed in horrible, horrible circumstances, which I won't go into here. That is potentially our future as white. So we have a horrible, horrible future ahead of us if we don't do something. So what do we do? What do we actually do about this? How do we ensure that your children are not going to be living in a society that is economically utterly bankrupt? And is it really such a bad thing that Pakistani Muslims are required to go and live in Pakistan? And is it really such a bad thing that Somali Muslims are requested to live in Somalia? It's not such a bad thing at all. What is a dreadful, awful thing to happen is for the white English to be reduced to a minority in their own country, which is something they were never asked about. And I believe this is the greatest racial crime that has ever been committed in the history of mankind. And asking people to go back to their own countries as an alternative to fulfilling this racial crime of reducing us to the indigenous us to a minority in our own country. There is absolutely nothing wrong with asking people to go home. There is absolutely everything wrong with doing this awful,